Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Prasarine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pasyatadeshatarine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Prasarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Nitai Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Jaya Kodhanita Jaya Murtasi Gaudanikai Jaya Maya Gurvati
Jaya Gaudanikai Maya Gurvati Gaudanikai Jaya Maya Gurvati
Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Prabhupada
Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Prabhupada
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada
Jaya Vishnu Patra Namaste Radha Jaya Shri Srimad Bhagavatam Sharanam Vindhyavakadanta Swami Shri Prabhupada Ki Swami Founder Acharya Shri Prabhupada Ki Jaya Vishnu Patra Namaste Radha Jaya Shri Srimad Shri Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Swami Prabhupada Ki Shri Guru Parampara Ki Anant Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Amacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Shri Rupa Shri Sanatana Bhakti Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopala Bhakti Dasa Shri Shakti Swami Prabhu Shri Kansibaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Sadguru Bhakti Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shri Ramakunda Radha Shri Guru Govardhan Ki Shri Vrindavan Turandavan Ki Shri Mayapur Dikdavan Ki Shri Navacharya Priyavan Ki Rangamaya Chumraya Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Tosu Maharani Ki Ivatam Harinam Sankirtan Ki Shri Prabhupada's Transcendental Book Distribution Ki Transcendental Prasadam Distribution Ki Shri Govindatai Naya Prashashi Ki Shri Kansanath Maharaj Ki Shri Giridhara Ki Shri Mati Ganda Devi Ki Shri Sundar Kumar Ki Shri Shri Radha Damodara Ki Shri Kartik Maras Ki Shri Prabhupada Ki Nitai Gaur Premanandi All glories to the Assembly Devotees Hare Krishna All glories to the Assembly Devotees Hare Krishna All glories to the Assembly Devotees Hare Krishna All glories to the lotus feet of Shri Guru Vishnu The lotus feet of our spiritual master are the only way by which we can attain real devotional service. I bow down to his lotus feet with great reverence. By his grace on the cross of material suffering, I obtain the mercy of Krishna. I wish to have my consciousness purified by the words of painting from his lotus love. Attachment to the lotus feet is the perfection of the soul's life. He opens my heart and eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From him ecstatic praying grace, Narayan innocence pure. The Vedic scriptures sing his piety. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy. The friend of the poor and noble master of the humanities. O master, be blessed with us. Who gives the shade of your lotus feet. For your fame is spread throughout the 3 worlds. We take shelter of your lotus feet. Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. Shri Govindatai Naya Prashashi. Please make us worthy of your mercy, so that the Scottish Shastra may flourish in numbers of happy devotees, with the blessings of Shri Lakshmi Devi, and especially enough for you and for the devotees. Shri Govindatai Naya Prashashi. Jai.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari.
Gopijana Vallabha Giridhari
Gopijana Vallabha Giridhari.
Gopijana Vallabha Giridhari
Gopijana Vallabha Giridhari.
Yashodanandana Vasudevaranjana Yashodanandana Vasudevaranjana Yamuna Tira Yamuna Tira Radha Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridhari
Gopi Jana
Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridhari Yashoda Nandana Yashoda Ramana Tira Yamuna Tira Reading from Srila Prabhupada Leela and Later Preaching in America Part 1. Devotee, they have no faith or trust that this can be done. Srila Prabhupada, see us, you rascals, see, open your eyes, see that we have no business. We have no food stock, still we are not worried. We do not know what we shall eat in the evening, but still we are not worried. I came to your country without any subsistence. Prabhupada argued that man's economic necessities could be easily settled by keeping cows and land. He said that men have made an unnecessary complex arrangement just for maintaining the body, thereby forgetting the purpose of human life. When a devotee contended that not everyone had the opportunity to get land, Prabhupada said that this was simply mismanagement. There was plenty of land in America. Devotee, Srila Prabhupada, they accuse us of being parasites. Srila Prabhupada, no, a parasite means if he takes others' property and tries to enjoy it. But we are not enjoying others' property. We are enjoying our Father's property. Ishavasya idam sarvam. Krishna is the proprietor. Why do you say parasite? We are good children of Krishna. And Krishna says, don't worry, I shall give you everything. Actually, Krishna says that. Why are you working so hard? Just surrender to me and I will give you protection, whatever you want. So we are giving everything. Why say parasite? The devotees were well aware that Srila Prabhupada did work, traveling constantly, managing his worldwide Krishna conscious society, rising in the middle of the night to translate Srimad Bhagavatam, and his disciples also worked hard, but they did not work like animals and animal-like persons for things that would be destroyed in time, and they did not work at horrible enterprises that ruined the best part of human nature. They did not work like asses and claimed they had no time left in the day to chant the holy name of God. Prabhupada, now this is a nice park, but nobody is coming here. We Krishna conscious people, we are taking advantage. So they are escaping, or we are escaping. Just see how foolish they are. They work so hard, but they are not taking advantage. But we are taking. So our policy is that you work hard, and we go and take from you. This is not escaping, this is intelligence. Srila Prabhupada's example was a delightful revelation to the devotees. And they laughed at the obvious truth. Here they were, walking so pleasantly with their spiritual master, and yet no one else was coming to enjoy the park. Prabhupada. But as soon as we ask, you also come and join, they will not. They will say, no, we shall work like this. We are asking everyone, come here, but they will not come. That is their enviousness. Therefore they say we are escaping and living at the cost of others. They say that we have got so many cars and the devotees' faces are bright. We're eating nicely and have no problems. But if we ask them to come, then it is very difficult. If we ask them to chant Hare Krishna and dance, oh, it is a very big, heavy task for them. As soon as they will come, they will know that there is no tea, no liquor, no meat, no cigarette. So you can say that we are escaping these things, but we are not escaping happiness. They are escaping happiness. Shall Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 5, Text 14, Lord Vrishabhadev's teachings. Karmashayam
Karmashayam
Hridaya Granthi Bandham
Hridaya Granthi Bandham
Avidaya Saditam
Avyaya Sadhitam
Apramataha
Apramataha
Anena
Anena
Yogena
Yogena
Yathopadesham
Yathopadesham
Samyak
Samyak
Yapohaya Paramitya
Yapoya
Yogat
Yoga
Kalmashayam Ritaya Granthi Bandham
Karmashayam Hridaya Granthi Bandham
Avidaya Sadatitam Apramataha
Avyaya Sadhitam Apramataha
Anena Yogena Yathopadesham
Anena Yogena Yathopadesham
Samyak Yopa Apaparamita Yoga
Samyak Yoga Paramita Yoga
Karmashayam Ritaya Granthi Bandham
Karmashayam Hridaya Granthi Bandham
Avidyaya Saditam Apramataha
Avyaya Sadhitam Apramataha
Anena Yogena Yathopadesham
Anena Yogena Yathopadesham
Samyak Yopo Paramita Yoga
Samyak Yoga Paramita Yoga
Karmashayam Ritaya Granthi Bandham
Karmashayam Hridaya Granthi Bandham
Avidyaya Saditam Apramataha
Avyaya Sadhitam Apramataha
Anena Yogena Yathopadesham
Anena Yogena Yathopadesham
Samyak Yopo Paramita Yoga
Samyak Yoga Paramita Yoga
Kamaya Saranam Hridaya Gati Bandham
Karmashayam Ritaya Granthi Bandham
Avidyaya Saditam Apramata
Avidyaya Saditam Apramata
Anena Yogena Yathopadesham
Anena Yogena Yathopadesham
Samyak Yopoyo Paramita Yoga
Samyak Yopo Paramita Yoga
Karmashayam Hridaya Granthi Bandham
Karmashayam Ritaya Granthi Bandham
Avidyaya Sadhitam Apramataha
Avidyaya Saditam Apramata
Anena Yogena Yathopadesham
Anena Yogena Yathopadesham
Samyak Yapahyo Paramita Yoga
Samyak Yapo Paramita Yoga
Kamashayam Hridaya Granthi Bandham
Karmashayam Ritaya Granthi Bandham
Avidyaya Saditam Apramata
Avidyaya Saditam Apramata
Anena Yogena Yathopadesham
Anena Yogena Yathopadesham
Samyak Yopoyo Paramita Yoga
Samyak Yapo Paramita Yoga
Karmashayam Ritaya Granthi Bandham
Karmashayam Ritaya Granthi Bandham
Avidyaya Saditam Apramata
Avidyaya Sadhitam Apramata
Anena Yogena Yathopadesham
Anena Yogena Yathopadesham
Samyak Yoga Paramita
Samyak Vyapoyo Paramita Yogat. Karmashayam Vidhaya Granti Banta. Avidyaya Saditama Pramata. Anena Yogena Yathopadesham. Samyak Vyapoyo Paramita Yogat.
Karma Ashayam,
Ashayam.
the desire for fruitive activities.
Desire for fruitive activities.
Vidaya Granti,
Vidaya Granti.
the knot in the heart. Bandham, bondage. Avidyaya, because of ignorance. Asalitam, brought about. Apramataha, not being covered by ignorance or illusion. Very careful. Anena, by this. Yogena, practice of yoga. Vitha Upadesham, as advised. Samyak, completely. Vyapoya, becoming free from. Uparamita, one should desist. Yoga, from the practice of yoga, the means of liberation. Translation. As I have advised you, my dear sons, you should act accordingly. Be very careful. By these means you will be freed from the ignorance of the desire for fruitive activity, and the knot of bondage in the heart will be completely severed. For further advancement, you should also give up the means. That is, you should not become attached to the process of liberation itself. Please repeat. As I have advised you, my dear sons, you should act accordingly. Be very careful. By these means you will be freed from the ignorance of the desire for fruitive activity, and the knot of bondage in the heart will be completely severed. For further advancement, you should also give up the means. That is, you should not become attached to the process of liberation itself. Prabhupada Prabhupada Ki Jai. The process of liberation is Brahma Jigyasa, the search for the absolute truth. Generally, Brahma Jigyasa is called Niti Niti, the process by which one analyzes existence to search out the absolute truth. This method continues as long as one is not situated in the spiritual life. Spiritual life is Brahma Bhuta, the self-realized state. In the words of Bhagavad Gita 1854, Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma Nasujati Nakamshati Samasarveshu Bhuteshu Madbhakti Labhate Param. One who is thus transcendentally situated at once realizes the Supreme Brahman and becomes fully joyful. He never laments nor desires to have anything. He is equally disposed to every living entity. In that state, he attains pure devotional service unto me. The idea is to enter into the Parabhakti, the transcendental devotional service of the Supreme Lord. To attain this, one must analyze one's existence, but when one is actually engaged in devotional service, he should not bother seeking out knowledge. By simply engaging in devotional service undeviatingly, one will always remain in the liberated condition. Mam cha yogi vipyacharena bhakti yogena sevati saguna santatani brahmapuya kalpati. Bhagavad Gita 14:26. The unflinching execution of devotional service is in itself Brahma Bhuta. Another important feature in this connection is Anena Yogena Yatupadesham. The instruction received from the spiritual master must be followed immediately. One should not deviate from or surpass the instructions of the spiritual master. One should not be simply intent on consulting books, but should simultaneously execute the spiritual master's order, Yatapadesham. Mystic power should be achieved to enable one to give up the material conception. But when one actually engages in devotional service, one does not need to practice the mystic yoga system. The point is that one can give up the practice of yoga, but devotional service cannot be given up, as stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 1.7.10. Atmaramas chamunayo nirgrantha apyokrama kurvanti ahoitikam bhaktim ittam buddha gunahari. Even those who are liberated Atmarama must always engage in devotional service. One may give up the practice of yoga when one is self-realized, but at no stage can one give up devotional service. All other activities for self-realization, including yoga and philosophical speculation, may be given up, but devotional service must be retained at all times. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare. As I advise you, my dear sons, you should act accordingly. Be very careful. By these means you will be freed from the ignorance of the desire for fruitive activity, and the knot of bondage in the heart will be completely severed. For further advancement, you should also give up the means, that is, you should not become attached to the process of liberation itself. So, just to recap the last few verses, that was given a few days ago. And then the process of liberation was described. Maharaj Rishabha is explaining to his sons what the process of liberation is, how to actually get free from the cycle of birth and death. And he makes many key points. So I'm just going to recap on the key points. He says that we should accept a bona fide spiritual master, become free from sense gratification, tolerate pleasure and pain, engage in devotional service, healing, chanting, glorifying the Lord, see everyone as on an equal platform spiritually, give up the bodily concept of life, home, family, etc., control mind and senses, celibacy, have full faith in revealed scriptures, always think of the Lord, and avoid unnecessary talk, perform prescribed duties, and patiently and enthusiastically practice bhakti yoga. So this is a summary of all the points that Rishabhadev said to his sons. And these 4 verses show us how to become free from false identification with the body, false ego, and materially conditioned life. And by practicing these things, one gradually becomes liberated from the material body and situated in this original spiritual body. And similarly, Krishna explains this in the Bhagavad Gita. If we read chapter 13, verses 8 to 12, Krishna, basically the same points come up in that chapter as well. And Krishna says that these are considered to be the process of knowledge, and besides this, whatever there is ignorance. So this is actually knowledge. All these different items are items of knowledge. And whatever else there is ignorance. So we can see how in the material world, everyone's following the path of ignorance mainly because they're not putting into practice these qualities, these items. So the knowledge people have is not actually knowledge, it's just basic propensities, how to eat, sleep, mate, and defend. And it's all just an expansion of that. So it's not real knowledge. And Rishabhadev is telling his sons in this verse that you should act accordingly and be very careful. So it's like a razor's edge. At any time we can cut ourselves with a razor. So in the same way, at any time we can fall away from the path just by lured by Maya and her allurements. So we have to be very careful. There's so many examples in the Bhagavatam how one falls away from the devotional path just by a small, there's the story of Bharat Maharaj, just because of the deer he actually forgot all his meditation and became a deer in his next life. So it's very, very, let me say, a very razor sharp edge that we're on. We have to be very careful we don't cut ourselves or endanger our life. So if we follow this path that Rishabhadeva was saying, then we'll become free from desire for fruitive activity, and the knot in the heart will be severed. So this knot is like the knot of attachments, lust, anger, greed, all these propensities. This is the knot in the heart, and we're attached to sense gratification. The desire for sense gratification has been there for millions of births. So it's very difficult to give up. But by the process of chanting and devotional service, one can purify the heart of all the dust, all these knots of material attachment can be severed. And here Lord Vishnudev is saying that we should give up the process of liberation itself. We shouldn't become attached to the process of liberation itself. This process, there's many different processes for self-realization. There's the yoga process, there's the Sankhya philosophy, but these processes are not the main goal. The main goal is bhakti. So just like Sankhya, it's basically the whole process is to find the root of existence. The root is Lord Vishnu. And the Sankhya philosophy is basically analysing the material world and trying to understand what the living entity is, what the source, the conclusion of the Sankhya is that the living entity is not a part of this material world, it's a part of the Supreme Whole. So that is actually the conclusion of the Sankhya philosophy. And but devotional service is actually, we've already found the root. We found that the root of all existence is the Supreme Lord, and our nature is to serve Him. So we're actually watering the root. So the one process of Sankhya is to find the root, and by becoming detached from matter, by analysing everything in the material world that's actually material, and that the spirit soul is eternal. And Bhakti Yoga process is to actually water that root by the process of Bhakti and to attach ourselves to Krishna. So Sankhya is actually becoming detached from this material world, but the process of Bhakti is to become attached to Krishna. So Srila Prabhupada says in the Bhagavad Gita that the both processes are factually the same, although superficially one process appears to involve detachment and the other process appears to involve attachment. So here Srila Prabhupada is saying that simply by engaging in devotional service and deviatingly, one will always remain in the liberated condition. So devotional service is actually the main purpose of all this analytical study of Sankhya, is to come to the stage of devotional service. But if we're already performing devotional service, then we don't have to go and try to understand and analyse all the material elements and understand anything in the yoga practice. We've already surpassed all that. So all the other processes of Sankhya and yoga can be given up again at some point when we come to a certain stage, but devotional service cannot be given up at any time. Because devotional service actually is the natural propensity of the soul. It's actually natural activity of the soul is to serve Krishna. So we can't give up what's our nature. And here in the Atmarama verse, in the Bhagavatam 1.7.10, this Atmarama verse is a very famous verse, and Lord Chaitanya actually explained this verse in 61 ways. You can read this in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And it means that even liberated souls, the Atmaramas, who are free from all kinds of material bondage and desire to render, they also desire to render unalloyed devotional service to the Supreme Lord. Because the Lord possesses such attractive qualities that even they become attracted, although they're liberated, they still become attracted to the Lord's activities and the Lord's personality. And Srila Prabhupada says that the personal form of Lord Krishna is so attractive that it comprehends all attraction, all bliss, and all taste, rasas. these attractions are so strong that no one wants to exchange them for material enjoyment, mystic powers, and liberation. So once we become attracted to Krishna, then all these other attractions of material enjoyment, mystic power, liberation, we don't really have much basis. They don't really attract the living entity once it comes to the platform of bhakti and enjoys this rasa with Krishna, and everything else becomes pale and insignificant compared to that. So we can see how there's different personalities that became attracted to the Lord, although they were in a liberated condition, like the four Kumaras are the four sons of Brahma, and they have all childlike bodies, but they're very, very old and very wise, liberated souls, and they were absorbed in Brahman. They were absorbed in this impersonal aspect of the Lord, but they became attracted just by the fragrance of the tulsi and flowers offered to the lotus feet of Vishnu. They became attracted by that, and they gave up their impersonal philosophy and became impersonalists, became devotees. And also Sukadev Goswami, he's the one who's actually reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam here. He was already situated in a liberated condition, even within the womb of his mother. He was already liberated. And yet he was attracted by the pastimes of the Lord. And Vyasadeva spoke the pastimes, then he became attracted to the personal aspect of Krishna. So in that way he gave up the impersonal Brahman feature of the Lord and became absorbed in reciting Srimad Bhagavatam and relishing all these pastimes of the Lord. Similarly, in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, we have many personalities who were absorbed in the impersonal mystic philosophy, but they became attracted to serving Krishna. For example, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he was absorbed in the logic and the impersonal philosophy, but he also became attracted to devotional service. Couldn't buy my position. And actually, it's Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya that Lord Chaitanya spoke the Atmarama verse to, if I can remember exactly. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. And also there was Prakashananda Saraswati, who's like, and all the Mayavadi philosophers. They also became converted by Lord Chaitanya's influence, and they gave up their impersonalistic ways and became devotees. So that's the power of association of the Lord and his devotees, that they can attract even the impersonalists to devotional service. It's so powerful. And very rarely, unless there is some offence, does anyone fall to that impersonal philosophy from bhakti. But generally, the bhakti process is more attractive, and it's many millions of times more attractive than merging into the Brahman. And in fact, it's considered very hellish for a devotee to even want to enter the Brahman, and when there's no relationship with Krishna, there's no service. And reading, we were having a Sunday yesterday, and I was explaining that actually in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, the Panchatattva, they came in the form of devotees to relish bhakti, to relish serving Krishna, because that's actually more blissful than actually being the master. So Advaita Acharya, Lord Nityananda, and Lord Chaitanya came in the form of devotees to relish being able to serve in the mood of devotion in a devotee's form. So because that's actually more attractive than being God. It's actually, in fact, that's why Lord Chaitanya came, because he wanted to understand the bliss of bhakti. What is this devotional service, and what does it taste like? So he actually took the form of Lord Chaitanya to relish that mood, because it's actually more relishable than being served. To serve is actually more relishable than being served. So these great personalities came to show us this path, and they defeated all different kinds of philosophies and different means of self-realization by the process of bhakti. the process of bhakti is the means and the end, and we can become completely satisfied by this process of bhakti. Whereas other processes that will not bring complete peace, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita there's a nice verse which describes that. The other processes are not, they're not the yogis, the jnanis, the sense enjoyers, they're not happy, they're not peaceful, because they're still hankering and lamenting, there's still some desire there for something, whether it's liberation, whether it's mystic yoga, whether it's sense enjoyment. But the devotees are completely peaceful, they're completely shant, because this relationship with Krishna completely satisfies the soul. This process of bhakti is the most fulfilling, more satisfying. Like Srila Prabhupada says, the reason we are feeling a vacuum in the heart is because of the Govinda necessity. We're needing Govinda in the heart. We need this connection with Govinda. So unless we have that, then no matter how much we try to enjoy this world, and no matter how many other processes we take up, we're never going to be completely satisfied, because the soul's real connection is with Krishna and through the process of bhakti. Because Krishna is transcendental, so the process by which we can know him and understand him is also transcendental. It cannot be material, so the process of bhakti is transcendental, and that's why it completely satisfies itself. So all other processes are not transcendental, they're material, and that's why we can give them up at some point. But because devotional service is an intrinsic nature of the soul, and we cannot give it up. That's what the soul is made of, bhakti. The soul is like part and parcel of Krishna, and each soul has bhakti. And this bhakti is what attracts Krishna to us. And this bhakti attracts us to Krishna. So we can't possibly give that up. Is there any questions or comments? Yes.
In the Bhagavad Srila says that the process of mystic yoga is useful until one comes to the platform of self-realization.
Yes.
So it's something in that relationship.
Can you say that again? So I don't
Well, mentions that mystic yoga is only valuable until one becomes self-realized. Generally, Srila Prabhupada didn't recommend mystic yoga even to come to the platform of self-realization in terms of devotees in ISKCON. He didn't recommend. As the yoga usually said it, that yoga is like for people who are very much attached to the body platform of life. And then on other times he said that the process of deity worship is essential to bring us to the platform of like above sense gratification. To take us off the bodily platform, deity worship is essential. So because you've been engaged in deity worship for a long time, we just think a little bit about how deity worship is more effective than mystic yoga in bringing us to the platform above sense gratification.
Because we have senses, so when we engage them in the service of the deity, then we're basically it's a limb of bhakti, isn't it? Deity worship. So it fulfills that desire. Like when we decorate Krishna, then we completely feel satisfied. We don't need to decorate ourselves. You know, that fulfillment is there. That need to decorate is fulfilled by decorating the deity. And by offering them nice foodstuffs, that satisfies that need to offer nice foodstuffs, you know, to eat foodstuffs, nice foodstuffs. So all our senses have been engaged in Krishna's service nicely. So they're not like, they're being fulfilled and satisfied. So, and also, because there's some, like, form involved, like there's a personal form, then that helps us to, because we're all like generally we're on the body platform, so we can relate to serving the deity. Instead of serving ourselves, we serve the deity. It's like we transfer all that to the deity. Offer them nice foodstuffs, decorate them nicely, sing for them. It establishes a more personal relationship with Krishna. So, and then if Krishna's in the center, then all our, our family members, whatever, if like Prabhupada says, if we put Krishna in the center, then it's a perfect way of, family life. And because generally householders are on the bodily platform, unless they're taking Vanapasta and sannyas, it's basically I, me, and mine. Then we have to overcome that by serving Krishna in some way, being connected to Krishna. That helps us to overcome this I, me, and mine. Does that make sense?
Even does that mean that from the moment you wake in the morning, you see all your activities in relationship to the deity?
Yeah, like I get up in the morning and I'm thinking I'm going to wake up the deities, So it's all like absorbing ourselves in serving the deity, from the morning till night. I'm thinking I'll wake up the deity in the morning, then dress the deity, offer them nice foodstuffs, everything centered around the deity, and then put them to rest at night. So it's gradually purifying our heart of these reducing this desire for sense gratification, because we're trying to please Krishna. So there's no room for separately trying to enjoy.
So in your experience, in the short periods when you haven't been engaged in deity worship, have you found that conception of everything being for the deity is still there? Even when in Buddhist tradition or Vaishnava service?
Yeah, but I kind of miss it because that personal interaction with the deity, I feel that's a need for me personally. I have that need to be close to the deity for that. I just have that need. Not everybody even has that. But I personally feel all my activities are centered around the deity, but I feel that I have a need to be close to them and serve them personally. It's my own personal experience. I don't know about anybody else. Yes.
Sometimes the emphasis is on first initiation, and I feel the emphasis is more on the second initiation is the real initiation. If you're not really doing deity worship, then they say that there's no need for second initiation. First is sufficient. So I'm just thinking, as long as you're chanting Hare Krishna, is that sufficient? Will you compromise your chances of achieving perfection if you don't take second initiation and worship deities?
Well, there's still devotees worship at home without second initiation. You have the deities, like they've got one entire deities at home. There's not necessarily need second initiation for that. So they can still engage in deity worship at home, and it's not a problem. But for temple worship, there needs to be second initiation. But it's it's to help us be regulated, and it helps us to be clean. It purifies us in so many ways by being regulated, by helping to understand what cleanliness is, punctuality is. It brings us to a higher level of moral goodness in general. So
we've got this option now, so even if we're not second initiated, we have to come to the platform of deity worship even when we're cleaning in the garden and the greenhouse, because it's all Krishna's property, it's all the deity's property. So
yeah,
every part of my property is all the deity's property. So devotees who they may not be engaged so much in deity worship, but if they've had that training of, even if they haven't done deity worship, but if they've been trained by pujaris or by devotees who are very clean, then that can be conveyed all of the activities.
Yeah, definitely. It has that. If you're trained in deity worship and you're trained in that standard, then it pervades whatever you do. It'll, whatever you're doing, whether it's cleaning the garden, or anywhere in any other buildings, it will have that same effect. Come to the same mode of goodness. And because we have bad habits for many, many lifetimes, then process of deity worship is to help us become free from these bad habits, to become regulated and strict in our standards and to bring about purification. And it's definitely, and it helps us to connect with Krishna as a person, because otherwise, we may not be so advanced that just by chanting the high holy names that we come to that platform of seeing the Lord as a person and having a personal relationship with him. But if we have done deity worship, it helps us in our japa, because we can, pray to the deity in our heart when we're chanting. We can connect to the deity. So it's a very potent limb of bhakti. And although chanting and hearing are the main limbs, deity worship is also important to help us connect to Krishna in that way and engage our senses in Krishna's service.
And that volume of nine volume of Shiva version Mahima, it talks there about how the Dharma becomes more and more manifest as the extended deity worship is more and more increased. So all the ground stuff turning to the Dharma and giving it here at home.
Yeah, the more the deities manifest, the more the Dham will manifest. And that's outside Vrindavan and Mayapur, then it's the devotees' consciousness that's going to help manifest the Dham. But if the deities are well worshipped and well looked after and nicely, worshipped, then the Dham will automatically manifest. We may not see it, but the Lord's performing his pastimes wherever he is. And so definitely our consciousness is involved with that, and the Lord will reciprocate. It's like Prabhupada says, the deity is not just some stone statue made of matter. It's actually non-different from Krishna himself. The Lord can manifest himself in any form he wants. He can change matter into spirit and spirit into matter. And just like when we have a post box, so Prabhupada gives the analogy of a post box, and he says that if we put our mail into any old box, it's not going to get to its destination. So we have to have an authorized box, a royal mail box, which we post our letter in, and that the mail will go to the destination where we want it to go. So in the same way, deity worship is very authorized. It has to be done in an authorized way, and then Krishna will accept our offerings. He will, this is the mercy form of the Lord. The deity is the mercy form, because he can accept our offerings. He can reciprocate with us in so many ways. So it's definitely according to our consciousness, the deity will reveal themselves. So, and just like according to our consciousness, Srimad Bhagavatam will reveal itself to us. So the more we hear and chant, the more we'll understand all these things. We can't just do deity worship, because we have to also hear and chant and read Prabhupada's books and thoroughly be engaged in that process to actually have the proper understanding of deity worship. Otherwise, it will just become mundane and just a ritual. So we have to really absorb ourselves in that as well. Yes, Max.
More confusion on my part with the verse. It says we should not become attached to the process of liberation itself. In that case, I guess we're supposed to become attached to chanting Hare Krishna.
Yeah. Well, that's why I tried to explain that. He's talking about the process like yoga and samkhya. But when you're practicing bhakti, then that's the ultimate aim of all the other processes anyway. And that's a natural activity of the soul, so we can't give that up.
Is that because it's non-different from Krishna?
Well, bhakti is actually Srimati Radharani, the personification of Srimati Radharani. So I heard that just as we are part and parcel of Krishna, then our bhakti is also part and parcel of Srimati Radharani. So they're both, the more we become devotional, the more we will attract Krishna. Just like Srimati Radharani attracts Krishna. Because bhakti attracts Krishna, there's nothing else that can control Krishna or attract him except bhakti. So that's the aim of our life. Okay, thank you very much for attending. Granthar Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Skanadurun ki jai, Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Shri Shri Kodanitai Shri ki jai.
Come on,